Hello, and welcome to today's session of Tech in Asia Live, where we talk to Asia's tech leaders about the most pressing issues facing them and their businesses. My name is Maria Lee, and I'm the COO of Tech in Asia, as well as today's moderator. Our topic this afternoon is how Razer joined the X-Force, lessons of leadership in times of crisis. We pulled together today's session because Razer has stepped out in a big way in their COVID-19 response. Their effective and quick actions have elicited global attention, praise, and Hollywood tweets, leading to an honorary membership in the X-Force. Today, we'll be speaking to two of Razer's leaders, Edwin Chan, the Chief Investment Officer, and LiMeng Lee, the Chief Strategy Officer and CEO of Razer FinTech, to better understand the culture and strategy that allowed this Asian tech company to respond so effectively in a time of crisis, and to learn more about their plans to lead through the rest of this year as well as beyond. Edwin and LiMeng, thanks so much for your time today. Do you mind giving us a quick introduction of yourself and how long you've been on the Razer X-Force? Edwin?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Maria. This is Edwin here. I am the Chief Investments Officer at Razer. So what I do typically, I help manage the day-to-day strategic allocation of the funds in the company. And of course, as we've been busy with the latest COVID reaction support fund. We've been very involved with the startup environment, but we also do later stage investments all the way to more exit type of investments for the business ecosystem at Razer. So that's what I do.
Thanks. LiMeng.
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having us as well. So I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Razer Inc. So that part of my day job is really going out and building more partnerships and looking for opportunities for Razer Inc., the gaming side. But I also double head as the CEO of Razer FinTech, which is the business that we've been looking to grow and been growing for the last couple of years.
Great. So a quick note to the folks at home before we get going. We have 10 to 15 minutes set aside at the end of the session to get through some Q&A. Feel free to comment and message in the thread, and our team will be floating up any questions for us at the end. All right. First of all, how are y'all doing in light of the extended circuit breaker announcement?
Trying to adapt as much as we can. I think there is at least some expectations that this will probably be extended. I think the cases continue to grow, and I think it is prudent, I think, for this extension to be made. Again, not just here in Singapore and other parts of the world where we have offices, we are also similarly kind of watching and seeing how we adapt. I mean, we have 16 offices worldwide, so really 16 different kind of jurisdictions to watch out for. So trying to deal with it as best as we can.
Yeah, it's really been about thinking hard as to how do you keep business as usual, right? How do you keep the going concerns, be it in the company, in the family, socially, so on and so forth. So I think it's a new paradigm that we've all got to think about, and that's exactly what we're trying to reposition ourselves for. Yeah.
Optimism. Awesome. I might ask y'all to share a few personal coping mechanisms at the end of this session. So we're obviously talking today because Razer has pulled together a number of different initiatives in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Do y'all maybe want to talk us through some of the ones that you're most proud of and the ones that you've helped formulate and lead?
So I mean, maybe you can go from the
Sure.
the top down, and then I can go into details after that.
Yeah, I think certainly, not chronologically, but for myself, it's been busy trying to set up the support fund so that we can reach out to partners in our business ecosystem, specifically the virtual credits business. This where our Razer Gold business is in, and also Razer FinTech, and so that's also the very much burgeoning FinTech ecosystems around the world. So coupled with the resources of our corporate venture fund, that has been stitched together very quickly to see how we can at least respond in the very immediate term to all the needs of our partners, and also making sure that the upstarts that deserve a place in all these ecosystems actually can survive well through this COVID-19 together with us. And it's really for us to not just bring to bear our financial resources, but also our experience, our time, our effort to help them all tide through these times. So that's what's really been front and center for me. We've done other initiatives as well, but I'll have LiMeng talk a little bit about them as well.
Sure. I think on top of the COVID-19 support fund, which we literally put together very quickly, just a little bit basis behind that was, we literally started seeing partners who have reached out and obviously talking about business overnight, really pulling back significantly, seeing very challenging conditions coming up, and seeing how we can do more with them. So we decided to put together a fund so that there is at least some proper kind of process to see through all the incoming inquiries and all that. So that was the part that I think Edwin, myself, my CEO himself personally, basically got this together. I think the other fun part, which I think you've been wanting to ask Maria, is obviously the mask manufacturing side. Again, that comes from having business across the globe, especially in China, which I think we saw the need for masks actually becoming very, very important. Singapore, we started seeing that there was a rush for masks and potential shortages and all that. And I think we decided to pool our experience on the manufacturing side to see what we can do, obviously, to enhance the domestic kind of manufacturing side to ensure that we will have a supply for Singaporeans. I mean, ultimately, Singapore is our headquarters. Actually, all our C-suites are based in Singapore and are Singaporeans. So happy to see what we can do to bring this back for our citizens as well.
Sure.
And of course, I don't think we were necessarily the only ones really racking our brains as to how to respond to this COVID-19. But I think thankfully we did have the resources and experience to really prime all our existing manufacturing lines to get this done. So we're pretty happy with it. I think we still got about over a week more to try to get the line up in Singapore and then start real production.
Right. So COVID-19, obviously, it caught the entire world off guard, both in terms of its intensity as well as the severity. And Razer was able to move pretty quickly across multiple fronts, right? Converting the lines from hardware into mass producing, it's no easy feat, not to mention the software and the finance and the investment side that you have also been able to pull together as well. So internally, what was the first mention, I think, amongst the leadership team of this feeling of, okay, we have to do something, like this is also our responsibility to take action and not just kind of wait and see to see how the virus situation shaped up?
Well, I think being global, in our mindset, the executive team meets, if not every day, but we do have a formal meeting every week. This has been going on for forever since the company was founded. So we touch on the most salient topics of the day, and clearly this came up. And when we have different voices coming from different geographies, that easily, percolated through for us to want to react. And it's not just us. We had our own fears, our own uncertainties, and so did our partners. And we had to do something. So we basically played up our strengths and saw what we could do in a very short period of time and what we could really focus our efforts in execution without, putting the rest of the operations of the business at risk. So we had a few choices and we picked those out, and these were the things that we decided to do.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think all of us actually tend to not stay put in a certain country. I myself was probably on the road every single week since the first day of work week of 2020. So as you go around the region and you talk to more people, you start to realize even very early on what the potential kind of fallout a situation like that if it gets out of hand, right? So spending time in China, spending time in Malaysia, spending a little bit of time in the US, we saw this coming. And to be very fair, it started off from our hardware side of things because some of our manufacturing lines are in China. We started seeing some impact to supply chain, and we needed to react to that. But then we also then saw the opportunity to see whether the software and services sides kind of can come in and kick in and help. Whether it's our partners who are looking to go digital or whatever. So that's how we started. And I guess as the problem dragged on and got extended and seems to be extending again. I think the ability to try to move fast and see what we can do, because I think this recovery will be probably a long dragged out recovery as well. People are trying to adapt, and we do want to make sure the key ecosystem partners that will be there will still be there as we kind of get out of this whole COVID-19 situation. Yeah.
So LiMeng, as you mentioned, obviously you probably the earliest warning came from your hardware side, but then also you had to think about how this would affect your software side as well as your services side. So how, can you give us a better sense of internally what those conversations were like which geos were popping up first? I mean, I think we can know, but just kind of talk us through what actually happened, and when the leadership team, how those conversations formulated to say, okay, we have to pull together an internal response.
Sure. So I guess, again, I think we're lucky to a certain extent. So we went and got ourselves listed the end of 2017. That brought us into the spotlight to basically say that is Razer just a hardware business? So at that point in time, we were already spending a lot of time pushing out our software, formalizing and pushing our services side to make sure that we have a hedge. So obviously in this current situation, while we were trying to make sure that our supply chain wasn't too affected, in fact, we started seeing that the demand for the software side and the services side really kicked up. I mean, we are basically as good as you can get a stay-at-home business. If you it started with people just playing more games and then doing physical activities. Then you now have people working from home trying to take some time away from work. They end up playing games and enjoy entertainment. So that's really how we then think about, can our systems and our infrastructure actually support this sudden kind of upsurge in activity, right? So that was also part of the things that while we're trying to make sure our supply chain wasn't affected and it's all clear right now, the demand side for the hardware is there. We are delivering on the products to our end customers, but the software and services side is where we actually took time to make sure the infrastructure is well stabilized to handle the uptake.
Internally amongst the leadership team, are there any decision-making processes or frameworks that y'all use to kind of assess the situation and help guide your actions?
Yeah, so it's usually very collegiate. I mean, we the leadership side, we come together and together with our co-founder, Min, CEO, we then decide. And then once we've all pitched in our ideas, our concerns, we then collectively take a decision. Once the decision is taken, we all pursue it. It's very often that way. And I think the cost of indecision is something that we always try to avoid. So likewise, this time around, we had to really react. Again, like LiMeng mentioned, we as a business are really about the users. Our motto has always been for gamers by gamers. And then itself, the gamer today is really the youth, and that's a big, massive, market out there. And those users out there, we need to really calibrate ourselves, not just to continue to kind of support their gamer type of lifestyles, but really to think about the broader impact of COVID, which is why we did what we did. Yeah.
Were there any friction points or concerns that, in terms of formulating your response? So maybe you guys were worried about moving too quickly, or I don't know, maybe the COVID would end a little bit sooner than expected and this would all be for naught?
Well, for me, I mean, why don't you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think you just got to roll with the punches. I guess we made a decision again. Whether things don't look right, and some of us may not fully agree. Once decision's taken, we move forward, and a lot of times it's a lot about moving along and then being very vigilant about what are our backup plans along the way. So as the situation evolves, we can then rightly, react, and that's what we've been trying to do. And I think it takes a team that's worked together for a long time to be able to do that cohesively. And yeah, so it's not been easy. As again, we run, over 16 offices around the globe, and trying to stay close to everyone in such times, even though we're all online, is not easy. And having that call to action being taken at the same time. That's also some coordination effort on our side. So it's just being very vigilant every step of the way. I think that's key.
And I think, Maria, just to chime in as well, to your point, it's not about whether we don't react, it's whether we react too slowly, right? So that's always one of the key things that Min and always tells the management team is just make sure that if you think that you have an idea, to make sure that you quickly put together the action plan and execute it. I think even along the way, and I've said this many times to even my team at the fintech level, is while there's official guidelines on when the MCO is lifted, and you might have some sense that, it may be extended. But what you should always do is put that official date as the date that things could potentially just change and work towards that, because you can't sit there and rest your laurels and your own beliefs that, it's going to be extended, so I have more time anyway. So that's how we basically try to get things up and running. I think the 30 days to get a mass manufacturing line up was a decision that was made very, very quickly. We saw that there was a lot of talk about people doing it, but you don't actually see anyone executing. And then the concern around masks and whether they are surgical and and all that medical grade and all that was something that we just said, look, we think we can do it. We have obviously looked at converting our lines. We learned from that and how we quickly get that out in Singapore, right? So that's how we worked.
Okay, so being decisive and then also being really clear on timelines and action items. So let's go back and try to dissect some of the building blocks that were put in place for this response, because obviously there's a lot of things that we're touching upon in terms of like the culture, the history of the company. And so can you help us talk us through some of the decision points that were already in place that helped you get to your current position? So for you two, probably most relevant, any financial decisions that were made, strategic decisions, but also touching upon like the corporate culture, the org structure, pretty open-ended.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I could start on that. Well, the company is not that young. We're already 15 years old. But then again, we have always espoused the startup mentality. So I think a lot of times what has allowed us to do what we do is to have this culture of being a self-starter, right? Everyone's got to be able to kind of do hands-on. And that's what we expect of ourselves, even at the most senior level. And that's what we expect and we hope to train our teams to do. And I think that's something that has played out well for us. Everyone's a very independent unit, and when we come together to get things done, it gets stuff done doubly fast, doubly more effective. I think that's one. I think the other is really to think about how do we then approach problem solving in a prudent enough but effective manner. So how do I kind of describe that? Very often we have very aggressive moves that we want to make in the business or in this case socially. And behind it, we need to really rally all our financial, operational know-how together to make sure that the decision is a good one. And we have a basis for executing along those lines. It's not just an idea and just say, okay, great, this is a good pie in the sky idea and let's just get it done. So a lot of it has to be, very well supplanted by good basis as to why we're doing certain things. And that in itself also shows the level of, thought and care that we put into our decision making. But it happens like in light speed, right? So you've got to do that very carefully, but you don't have much time to do it. So that's something that we've been dealt with to ourselves many times. And I think that's how we've grown as a company for the last 14, 15 years. I think those are hallmarks as to how things get done over at Razer. LiMeng?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can speak from two different perspectives, given that I'm probably one of the more recent entrants into the Razer family. I was an advisor out externally as a banker to Razer, so I saw from that side, and obviously now as an employee for the last couple of years. So I think one of the key things that I think amazed me when we started working on the fundraising and obviously understanding the business, even from the outside in, was number one, I think the decision making at the management level is a pretty flat structure. So that I get into a room, it's me, it's Min, it's Edwin, and all that, and we decide should we do the listing in Hong Kong? What should we do and all that? So I think that from the way the decisions were made, it was quite apparent even for someone who was not in the company at that point in time. Number two is sometimes you want to make sure that all the ducks are in a row. All the data is in front of you before you actually take a decision. You realize that one of the things that how Razer broke into the scene and became the number one gaming business back in days was Min decided this was a great business. There will be demand, maybe not at a point in time, but I think it's going to grow. I decided to go out and create a gaming mouse that nobody knows that they need, but actually everyone wanted one, right? So it's one of those things that continue to be right front and center. And now flip over to the other side. Now that I'm employed the last couple of years, that thing has not changed. In terms of if we think and we, based on our own judgment, we think that there is a demand or there is a business case behind it, at the end of the day is about speed. And again, speed it works both ways, speed to execute. But obviously, if we think that the project wasn't something that we think, even with the best of intentions, we realize it doesn't really work out. The speed in terms of making a call to shut it down and move on is also critical on the other side. So you don't kind of keep chasing your tails, thinking that the end of the light at the end of the tunnel is going to come, and then you just keep burning and burning. So I think that's a very interesting thing I've also then picked up along the way, and that's how I've been running the team at the fintech level as well.
So how do you evaluate the risks and the trade-offs between speed and risk and opportunity? And how do you counsel your team to think through those changes?
Well, I think every project has its different parameters, of course. But because we don't have a single decision point or decision maker, right? So the person who brings up the idea, the DRI, brings it up, and literally you sit in front of like a firing squad, and it happens very fast. Where if you're able to defend what you are trying to push for, then we make a quick decision and let's go, right? So it's another one of those things that you don't prepare layers and layers of presentation and go around, running around in circles, and then you realize either the opportunity has passed because COVID has been lifted or whatever, right? So I think whenever a project is brought up, whoever it may be, even our CEO who brings it up, it becomes a very open forum for people to basically share their views, and then we take a decision as a team whether to move forward or not.
Yeah, and the business of business physics will always apply, right? When you want speed, then you really kind of trade off a little bit on the quality of the outcome and how much investments and costs you're going to be putting into that effort, and those things have to be constantly reweighted, iterated, and then you've got to be vigilant every step of the way and be ready to change your mind when you need to.
So y'all are obviously leaders within the organization, and so how do you kind of make sure that these kind of principles and mentality trickles down, down to the most junior DRI on your team?
Well, I do think it takes time, as with everything. I think they've got to go through enough case studies to appreciate, what we talk about, and of course seeing that we act it out as well. I think talk can be really cheap, but I think really espousing those values, the base principles, and then putting them into action yourself. That includes being hands-on. I think that's critical. And as you build the teams, it'll take time to percolate down the organization. We used to be super flat structure. We still are. I mean, from a communication standpoint, we all still maybe 2 degrees removed from Min. But as we kind of build a robust infrastructure across the organization, then it takes time to trickle it down. Not everyone's ready to be receptive of such learnings. I think they've got to put through their paces, and we've got to put them through their paces. But this is all part of our conditioning of the staff, ourselves, continual improvement, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think we just got to walk it and while we talk it at the same time.
No, I totally agree. I think the whole startup mentality the mentality that if we don't react fast enough to situations, our business could be disrupted very quickly, especially in the spaces that we play or operate in. That I think is very much the part of the culture. We also then encourage people to give us ideas along the way. And obviously, again, you need enough conviction before you bring it up. But if it's a good idea, we will take and run with it. I think on a personal note as well, slightly more gray haired than some of the guys in the team, having been through 98, been through 9/11 in New York and SARS in Hong Kong, and then 08 crisis working in places like JP Morgan and all that. How people put together, focus, and all that are lessons that I actually communicate to the teams, all the way down to the junior guys where we do daily or weekly catch-ups. I think helps, especially in times like that where the physical interaction is not possible. Challenges of communicating through digital, while you can see the person, you may not know whether the person is learning. So we are just trying to again kind of roll with the punches, as Edwin has said, but making sure that communication lines are wide open. People can reach us anytime there's a problem, raise it as fast as possible, and then we take a decision and move.
Great. So let's switch gears slightly over to the financial and strategic side. Obviously, pulling together a $50 million fund is no small feat. Obviously, transforming lines, there's an opportunity cost for hardware you could be producing otherwise in order to produce mass. So maybe if you guys can share like some of the strategic and financial decisions or building blocks that you already had in place that kind of put you into such a strong position to be able to offer these kinds of services and relief efforts at this point.
Well, I think first up, we have been, as a business, one that likes to sleep well at night. We make sure that we have the necessary resources, not just cash, but people, abilities, and bandwidth to get things done. Although things that we decide to do sometimes could overwhelm us in a very short period of time, but once decision taken, we move ahead with it. So that level of readiness, I'd say, has put us in a good position for many years now, and we tend to think more long term than just the immediate term. So that underpins a lot of the decisions that the company has taken, all the way through setting up new business lines, who to hire, when and where to go raise funds, and what do we do next in terms of our role in the various ecosystems that we are now participant of or having leadership in. So those things matter a lot to us. At the end of the day, the fundamental tenet of our business is really the end user that we face, which is the gamer and today the youth, and ostensibly. And that requires us to really be on top of what's going on in the world and being very socially responsible, very tech savvy, and being very quick to respond and being very, very authentic, right? I think one thing that we've been able to do is as a leading lifestyle brand for the gamers is to be very authentic. And I think that really is the hallmark of what the Razer brand is about. I think those things are fundamentally what drives us and makes the place, at Razer a little bit more unique in terms of how we operate. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I chime on a bit. I think I spoke with a few founders a couple of weeks ago, including Willis. We were chit-chatting, and one of the things I shared was we were probably also lucky, to be honest. We went and did our listing at the right time, being able to raise a whole bunch of money at the right time. But also because we were listed in Hong Kong, the focus on profitability and our path to profitability was something that investors asked us kind of all day long, right? So for the last 2 years as a busy listed company, we have always worked very hard to execute, to show the continuous growth of the business, and obviously to make sure that our bottom line continues to improve, so that actually when you look at it today, why were we able to pull $50 million together to do this fund? It's not something that we had to go out and fundraise. We literally, after 2 years, and obviously for the last 2 years under Edwin's watch as the CFO, our cash burn was actually very, very minimal, right? Other than investments into a phone business, which we have actually announced that we're stopping. But in terms of cash, we have 500 million plus of cash on our balance sheet, which is where the $50 million is actually drawn from. And we have zero debt. So this is one of those things from a financial perspective, why we are able to do what we are doing today. And the other part is we've always talked about at the IPO about building an ecosystem. To be fair, at the IPO, if you look at the 2017 first half numbers, 97% of the numbers were purely hardware, right? So we talked that we're going to build the ecosystem. By today, if you look at the numbers that we've announced, the software, we're now 80 to 90 million and growing registered users versus 35 in 2017. We have our services side, which is where the COVID-19 fund kicks in. The contribution from that business has actually become quite a big contribution, and also because the margins are pretty decent, it adds to the bottom line quite straight away. So it's a case where, not to say that we've been absolutely smart around it. It's just that we've also been lucky in terms of timeline, being out there and under the pressure, versus some of the guys who are only starting to feel the heat because of fundraising challenges or the COVID-19 business impact.
Yeah, I think curiously, LiMeng reminded me that with the 50 million that we've just raised, or rather, purposed for the COVID support fund, interesting fact was that we didn't spend more than $40 million for the first 10, 12 years of the business to grow it to where it was. So I think we like to see our dollar go a long way, and I think that value, the business principle, still sticks with us quite closely. So we're pretty judicious about what we invest in. Yeah.
And you're echoing a big theme that we've heard from the tech and startup space for the last year, which is profitability is one of the most important measures that a startup can get to as quickly as possible. It buys you freedom, essentially.
Yeah, I think having the levers, having good control over the levers that get you onto that path, I think that's really important. It's just not it's not binary. You've got to really steer the waters and know when to invest and when to really throw off cash. I think those two things are quite important all at the same time.
So Edwin, as the Chief Investment Officer, what about the COVID-19 situation made you decide that this was the really important time to invest? I mean, beyond obviously that it's a black swan event, but I think for you personally.
Yeah, I think it coincided with us setting up the investments office this year. This role that I'm in now started 1st Jan 2020, and of course, unbeknownst, we didn't see this coming. We were very fortunate to have had done our very first deal before COVID hit hard on all of us. And today, we are still making sure that we watch out for good, companies to invest in, good founders to work with. And that hasn't changed. It's just that, many out there are under duress because of the circumstances. It's not due to the inability to create or design or to manufacture. And I think when we have that ability to kind of provide that bit of support, we should, because we would have provided those to our investee companies in any case through thick and thin. So that's how we kind of formulate our corporate VC approach. So it's really just accelerating the path to find more of such good companies and really helping them tide through these tough times, because otherwise you wouldn't have a chance to even discover them because they wouldn't be around because of COVID.
Great. So let's talk about your expectations for Razer's performance as a company in 2020. So obviously many companies right now are just trying to survive and minimize their losses and just kind of get through this year. Razer, obviously, your gaming, your services side probably has seen an uptick. LiMeng, as I think you alluded to earlier. any thoughts on as to how that uptick in the software and services side will kind of balance out the hardware side, or what you guys expect for this year?
Yeah, so maybe I can start. I think the COVID-19 situation had some impact, like I said, in the first couple of months. But I think very quickly by March, the issue around that has already been resolved. I mean, China is back to work. The demand continues to increase. It's not just on the software services side, on the hardware side as well, right? People are looking for more broadcasting stuff. I literally just got my own little pink color microphone here. Or gaming mouse and keyboards, and people are also looking to enhance their work from home setup. So the hardware side is actually doing very, very well. I think there are also friends who have basically said that I've not turned on a game for the last 15 years as I spend my time working in banking, but now that I have a little bit more time, I can't go out and play golf. I've decided to play my CSGO again, right? So there are kind of gamers coming off the woodworks as well. That's number one. Number two, from the software services side is where we have managed to really help partners. So I think one of the things that we were quite proud of is, we saw places like Zook, where I've been going since I was, 18 years old, whatever, having to close down because of the restrictions, right? So having been able to then help them still get out there, get the streamers and participants to support. We use Razer Gold and Bigo Live as a streaming platform to help them kind of continue to interact with their club goers. People were able to give virtual gifts to the DJs, things like that, where we decided that we can actually do it very, very quickly with them. So that's something that I think from the software and services side, fintech, I think that part of the business actually has picked up very well for us. People are now thinking about digital payments, right? So number one side of it is for gaming and entertainment. The other side is, because of COVID-19 and cashless and all that, people are thinking about using whether it's our e-wallet, or on the other side, as you stay home, do you need to reload your telco pins and your game pins? But then on the other end as well, we also operate probably one of the biggest online gateways where e-commerce sites continue to see uptick of activity. People are buying stuff. We're already starting to see kind of the second wave of people looking at what to buy. Yes, essential goods is number one. People are now starting to look at furniture, looking at cosmetics because they want to look better on screen when they do live chats and all that. So we actually see that continue to grow. And the gateway side is actually the activity is picking up. Now, some of the things that we've also kickstarted is where some of the partners that we've been talking to for quite some time, there is always this resistance when business is doing well. Why do I really need to digitize? Why do I need to do this? It's going to take resources. My business is going well. I'm throwing out dividends. So a lot of these conversations have suddenly come back front and center. They come to us and say, look, a lot of your users are the guys who are the youth and millennials, the guys who are actually willing to spend money. My traditional users probably don't even know how to get online and get stuff. How do I get to your users? We then say, fine, we can unlock our users. We can use our marketing machine to help you get the product or service you're trying to get out there. But then that's when my fintech payments come into play as well. So I think just, again, the ecosystem, as I mentioned, that wasn't really very apparent at the point when we did the IPO, is really pulling together and showing the power of the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, us being one of the few guys that on the street who understands hardware and software really well, it puts us into a strong position to do more IoT type products for our users coming out of COVID, even more so. When the world's going more contactless, everything is going online, digital. We've been big on esports. Streaming is also another industry that's very, adjacent to that. And those markets are the ones that we are now really investing into to really build the next level of user experiences and connectivity for the users. So that ties in with our own investment strategy even before COVID. But of course, with COVID, we are more focused with those that play into these these themes even more than before.
Edwin, if we can stick with you, obviously Razer is a publicly listed company and the global stock markets are in massive fluctuation right now. Any concerns from your side, anything you're doing to try and hedge against it, or are you just trying to ride through the storm and focus on business as usual?
Yeah, so I think the equity market route is something that everyone's experiencing. I think it's creating a lot of uncertainty. For us, it's always been very clear since we decided to go raise capital in Hong Kong back in November 2017. It was really with the sole purpose of really raising that cash hoard for us to invest. And as we can recall, it was close to $600 million of cash that was raised, primary capital, just going straight into the business. We've not really touched much of those cash today. We still have over $500 million which we want to deploy. And I think given our track record of really being able to work the levers of our operations to generate cash, to invest, I think this will see us down a very, very long path of further growth. And I think COVID-19 has already seen some of these bear fruit. We were now able to really position better in terms of some of the M&A opportunities. For instance, we don't need to really hedge all that much. We are a global business, so I think that our treasury side would have taken care of that mostly. But with the cash that we've raised, 100%, I think we're not too bothered by what's happening in the markets, because back then until now, it was a strategic decision for IPOing in Hong Kong, and that is the cash hoard that we have to really go out and invest. I think we've held back a little bit, and I think this year onwards we've been looking at all sorts of partnerships and investments. So I think that's going to be put to good work.
Thanks. LiMeng, so Razer bid for a digital banking license here in Singapore. How are you feeling about that decision in the current climate? How has COVID kind of shown you, whether this was a wise investment? I think I know the answer to this, but anything that's kind of surprised you along the way?
Yeah, well, again, I think we've always looked at this very carefully when we decided to spend the time, the effort to apply, right? So my comment to that is this continuing to be something that we are very interested in? The answer is yes. Obviously, the delay in the decision making of the license just means that from the Singapore perspective, we don't know whether we will end up starting it this year or next year, and that's assuming we actually get awarded, right? But going back to the fundamentals, I think I do appreciate the reasons why the regulators had taken this decision. I think there are too many things on their plates. Coming out with all the revised budgets, and obviously I see one of our friends from DISG, Wei Gang, on the line. These guys are all stretched in thousands different ways to react to this ever-changing situation. I think the last thing they really need to focus on is this. But I think from the business side of things, what has become very apparent is, again, just looking at the activity on our side of things, is that innovation through technology, and obviously pushing for things like digital payments, a kind of a singular touch point where you literally can get your grants, get your incentives, pay your bills, everything kind of what we always thought of as a kind of a digital bank application, which really isn't a bank where you go in and check your balance or whatever, right? It is a single one-stop shop where you can literally use it like a lifestyle companion, becomes even more important today. So we do hope that the situation here in Singapore or the region, I think Malaysia also made a decision to delay it, that they will see that there is still a need for this, and when the time is right, that we see whether we can get this going.
All right. Last few questions before we go to Q&A. Any predictions for how COVID will change how the world works, especially in the gaming industry and other industries that you touch?
Yeah, maybe I can start since I'm the one interacting more with the community. What we've seen and what really interests us is really in areas of hardware software integration where manufacturing is of concern. We can definitely lend a lot of know-how into that, while building out the next era of big startups and companies. And then, of course, as we go into the post-COVID world, anything that digitizes our day-to-day activities, or to the extent creates the opportunity for more contactless forms of activity and transactions, I think those would be really interesting. So, for instance, we are working with a lot of streaming companies to see how further can streaming be augmented to help with communications, for instance. For contactless kind of autonomous side of things, we are working with, we're exploring some projects with some of the leading startups in the world where they do robotic F&B work. For instance, there's a startup coming out of China now. They have a Singapore office called Ratio. We're working with them to see how we can implement more of such solutions, including our payments platform with them, while thinking hard about really making sure that their leading thought process around autonomous, say, espresso cafes, or in the future for specific markets like Asia, where you have bubble tea that's being automated by robotic arms. How does that translate from someone waking up, logging into his or her laptop, going onto the mobile phone, placing an order while playing a game, and then going through? So all the hardware software interactions, I think we stand a really good chance to really be a meaningful partner to all these guys, and that's where we're investing our time and effort in, and that's our call to action with a lot of these startup founders as well, to kind of work together. It may not be an investment; it could just be a collaboration. It could be just working together, feeding off both our strengths of our ecosystem and their know-how. So it keeps life interesting even now during these times of COVID. Yeah.
Bubble tea is the two magic words.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and then I think last question for me, is there anything that other companies and other startups can learn from Razer in terms of your own response, and for them learn how to better adapt for themselves?
Well, I think it's always as you're building the business, it's always good to be aggressive, but always think of the rainy days. I think what we've done is also to have saved up enough resources for a rainy day as such, where the ROI, the ROS, on things just become so magnified. I think that's one, but I think the ability to stay close to the ground, to understand the users well. I think as technology becomes ubiquitous, especially for us, we've seen a lot of core technologies become very commonplace. And then how do we repurpose a lot of these technologies for the sole purpose of the user? And that's where we really recreate new categories and new user experiences. And that's what really has been a successful, page out of our playbook, right? And I think there will still be many opportunities for all these companies out there to kind of continue to reinvent themselves through and post-COVID. And being very vigilant at all times. I think business fundamentals will always be very important. That one thing you cannot escape, right? Cash, unfortunately, as we all are beginning to find out, is king, and that in itself is really rattling the whole market end to end. So those few things I think are very important things that we are also taking home as key takeaways for ourselves from this COVID episode.
LiMeng, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I echo what Edwin has said, because these are all things that we kind of think about day in, day out, in communication with our founder and our management and all that. I think one of the things that we also want to be able to see from startups, first, I think, you can take all your financial matrices that came out over the last kind of few years and throw it out the window. I think at the end of the day, is focus on your business. Make sure that key focus of the business is doing well, and once you are starting to at least show some traction, maybe again not to do many things at the same time, but make sure you always have a backup plan. I think this backup plan, option A, option B thing has really been powdered into our head that at any one point in time, if we need to be able to pivot, we always have an option and we can pivot very fast. But again, the risk is you don't want to be spreading your limited resources too thin as well. So don't try to do too many things at any one time. Conserve resources, focus, and see where you can actually kind of survive this period. I think that's, to me, the most important part, because I think we were just chatting with Min on WhatsApp just before this. I think there's an article that just came out. Literally, the thought was, for the companies that cannot innovate or do anything during COVID-19, these businesses will struggle in the new kind of world after.
Great. That is actually a wonderful setup to moving on to our Q&A. And before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out that if you enjoyed today's session, please do check out our upcoming product development conference that will be happening in July. This year's theme for us is about how companies can pivot their product during a pandemic. A lot of alliteration there. So it's going to be our first completely virtual conference, and we'll be addressing exactly that question, which is just how do companies identify, pivot their product to help meet this new normal. So question number 1, how can startups and SMEs innovate in a time of COVID-19 given the challenges? There is a lot of talk right now about disruptive innovation, but at the same time, it's kind of difficult to know when you're also cash strapped and you're trying to potentially doing layoffs and you don't have a lot of money to invest in innovation. So what would you advise a startup in that particular situation?
Well, I think largely we've seen very strong support from all the different governments around the world. And with whatever support, especially financially, that companies been able to receive, go digitize, right? There are many things that they can actually automate and digitize, be it processes and day-to-day tasks. The ability to communicate, signing up for the first corporate Zoom account or Teams account, and I think things like that. The fundamental mindset change will go a long way.
Okay. With over 16 offices, what is your strategy to keep your people motivated, cohesive, and productive while working from home? Any internal, games or initiatives that you've kicked off?
Well, I think again, because we saw this early enough, we actually even internally started kind of split teams and business continuity plan, kind of taking it out and upgrading it early on enough. So I think it wasn't a sudden disruption to our staff working from home, for one. Number two, if you realize that the business of Razer, again, to Edwin's point, is really putting the user, and in fact, a lot of our users or our staff are actually users of our product. So there are really a few ways they kind of interact with us, because our founder and CEO is very active on social media. He talks quite openly about things that he's doing. Then obviously internally there are forums, like we use Workplace to share developments. We use platforms like Teams to do daily check-ins and project-based conversations, and obviously right at the top for the management level and our regional offices, you are either chatting in the mornings, in the afternoons, or at least on a kind of consolidated basis. Every week we all get together, kind of hear each other out, where the problems are, where the challenges are. Oh, here we managed to get a new lead and all that. So we are always kind of interacting, but obviously 1,400 staff. We from the management side will try to make sure that at least the L2s understand what's going on. But to the extent we can also go down and have that personal touch, we try to do that as much as we can.
Great. The next question. What are you doing to pivot marketing plans and brand messaging during COVID-19? And I have to say, in credit to Razer, I think all of your comms have been super on point, right? Always talking about supporting the community. I think never crossed like a potentially exploitative edge that I think some other brands have struggled to find the line between. So how have you all done that internally?
Uh, I think we. Yeah,
Nothing has really changed. Yeah, I don't think anything has really changed. Right now, with everyone's focus more on COVID and survival more than anything else, I think we just want to be constructive in what we put out there. And of course, as business as usual, we will do what we can, and I think that's just par for the course. We have more important things to see to, and we are now using our channels to maximize the communication as to these issues that that we all really should care about. Which is why even with respect to the masks, the updates from our co-founder CEO, it comes on regularly directly from himself. Um, we for instance, the COVID-19 support fund, yeah, we want to make sure that it gets out there so that the people who need, the companies that need help, and who can fit the mold for their support, yeah, we love to kind of get connected ASAP, right? Because time is of the essence. Yeah, otherwise, for us, business as usual. Our marketing team continues to be working really hard, 24/7, really watching out for any new developments. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with them as well. And we've actually beefed it up further. So at some point, we should get our new chief of marketing online as well to be introduced. But yeah, very busy, business as usual. But we're really focusing our efforts where it matters right now.
I think it goes back again to culture and fundamentals of where we start from, right? I mean, if you look at our motto, it's for gamers by gamers, and if you know gamers all the way from the start, these guys are probably the most I would say demanding of users, demanding, but also because if they are loyal, they are super loyal. We have thousands of fans who have basically tattooed our logos. Someone tattooed my CEO's face on himself as well. So we've always been about the user. So it's never around going out and saying, let's make use of this opportunity to do this or do that. We think about what our users want, so that when we actually do it, our users go, that's exactly what I want, not go out and try and say, I think this is what you want. I think you might, I hope you see that different part of it, where the traditional big guys will go launch a new product and say, I think this is what you want. And then you see all the guys going, no, not really. This thing sucks, that sucks. Whereas for us, we listen to the users, so that when the product runs out or comes out onto the shelves or is released on the software, it is exactly what they want.
Great. And our last question, I think staying on the profitability theme, how will the pandemic affect Razer's push towards profitability? What would be the main driver of this push going forward, amongst your different product lines, of course?
Sure. I think as with all businesses, I think everyone's battening down their hatches, and so are we. So we're being very careful about where we spend and invest. Clearly, the need for travel has come down a lot, so things like that actually do help. So it's really a balance of things. Business as usual, we run a whole suite of hardware, software, and services business units. So that in itself creates a lot of ability for us to be diversified, right? So when something else is really happening, going really well on one end, we'll then spend to improve on other areas that need to kind of improvement along the way. So this is a good time for us to really kind of look inward and then build and refresh and burnish all the things that we've been wanting to do when we really couldn't pay attention to them when things were really busy. Not that things are not busy now. Now it's like we can afford to have a bit more of a lull, say on the manufacturing side or on the logistics side, when things have inevitably slowed down for the world, and we can then start thinking about what next step can we take and what can we afford to do that the competition cannot, and that will certainly put us in a very good stead. Otherwise, the performance of the business continues to be strong. I think coming out of COVID, we as one of the work from home, stay at home kind of companies, I think there's going to be a very big opportunity. As with our themes of esports, streaming, upcoming 5G, those things are areas that we are already in the thick of execution. So those will put us in a very, very strong position when it comes when things come out of COVID. So yeah, I think we've always been very vigilant ourselves. Every dollar goes a long way. It still does now. and with the ability to try to invest and do deals even during these times of COVID. I think if we can execute those really well, then that puts us into another different position, much stronger position, together with the investee companies too.
Actually, sorry, I lied. Last follow-up question. It's obviously a bit of a buyer's market out there right now. Are there any companies you have your eye on, any specific sectors, which if they came in at the right price, Razer would be interested in?
CIO, please.
Yeah. Well, price aside, I do think that we are always on the lookout to bolt onto our ecosystems, right? Like I said earlier, good teams, good founders, good know-how, wherein they typically may be all dressed up to go, but they need a bigger platform to kind of really vault themselves into the marketplace, or they have a very keen interest to look at and focus on the gamer/youth markets. Which in itself is a niche, but a big niche, and that's where we play well. So we're looking for good partnerships every step of the way, and our investment mandate is global, and it starts from seed companies with proven concepts, all the way to early stage guys, right? For companies to invest in a more serious manner, such as acquisitions, I think we are very judicious. It has to be very accretive to us, and it's got to have a long-term mindset alignment as to what we want to do in this whole ecosystem. So without going into any details, I think we are definitely open for business. We have been entertaining a lot of requests coming out of 2019, and now with the COVID fund, we see very specific companies, very interesting companies reach out, and we love to partner with them, and we're having those discussions as we speak.
Fair enough. All right, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much to both of our speakers for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
For everyone from home who's attended, as always, stay safe and stay healthy. And do head over to techinasia.com to subscribe to our premium content to stay in the know about all things Tech in Asia. We'll be publishing a recording of this session in case you have any favorite parts that you want to replay over and over again. And other than that, we will see you next time for TIA Live. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.